There is a detective in Los Angeles who cannot let the dead stay anonymous. A body dumped in the Hollywood Hills. A woman nobody ever reported missing. A victim the whole city was happy to forget. To the city, they are case numbers. To Harry Bosch, they are the whole job because everybody counts or nobody counts, and he has spent his entire life on the wrong side of that math. His own mother was murdered when he was a boy, and her killer walked free for decades while the world moved on and forgot her name. Bosch never forgot. He grew up in an orphanage, learned early how easily the world lets a person disappear, and became the one thing that town had no use for. A cop who refuses to close a case just because it is convenient. Over 7 seasons, he works the impossible ones. A serial killer he shared an orphanage with. A cold case that runs back to his own mother. A wealthy man who kills without ever getting his hands dirty. And the whole time, the institution he serves keeps proving it cares more about protecting itself than protecting the dead. Before this is over, Harry Bosch solves the murder that made him. He loses the people he loves, and he finally learns what the badge is actually worth to the men above him. This is the entire story of Bosch. A doctor's dog goes digging in the Hollywood Hills and comes back with a child's bone. That is how it starts. Not with a scream, not with a body, just a small pale thing in the dirt that reopens a case everybody had already given up on. A boy who went into the ground back in 1989 and stayed there. Detective Harry Bosch catches it, and Bosch, being Bosch, decides the kid gets a name and a killer no matter how long it takes. But the department has other plans for him. He already shot a suspect named Roberto Flores dead in an alley, and while the brass cleared him, Flores's widow is suing, claiming Bosch executed the man and planted the gun. Her attorney is Honey Chandler, a woman who can make a jury hate you before breakfast. So Bosch is chasing a dead boy by day and defending his own badge by night. And somewhere in between, he falls into bed with a rookie patrol officer named Julia Brasher, which is going to end about as well as everything else in this man's life. The coroner lays out the child's injuries. Years of them. Healed breaks stacked on healed breaks. And Bosch goes somewhere quiet, because Bosch was that kid once. Beaten. His own mother murdered when he was young. A case nobody ever closed. Now the ghosts have partners. Then the case gets a helper nobody wanted. A patrol stop turns up a naked corpse in the back of a van. And the driver is a man named Raynard Waits, a serial killer who wants to trade. He will plead guilty and point to every grave he ever dug. And he claims one of those graves belongs to Bosch's boy from the hill. The district attorney, a political climber named Rick O'Shea, loves it. Loves the cameras more. Bosch does not love any of it, because Waits knows things about the victim only the police should know. And that is the kind of detail that keeps an honest detective up at night. The boy gets his name back. Arthur Delacroix, a runaway from a house full of pain. But before Bosch can figure out who really put Arthur in the ground, O'Shea insists on parading Waits out to point at his kill sites, and against every warning Bosch gives, he orders the killer's cuffs removed. Waits grabs a detective's gun, shoots the detective and a deputy district attorney, and vanishes into the city. Suicide by cop, except backwards. Now the monster is loose, and Bosch owns the blame. The trial ends the way trials do in this world, sideways. The jury sides with Flores's widow, then fines Bosch exactly $1. A victory that feels like a slap and a slap that feels like a victory. Waits, it turns out, has a mother of his own. An old woman who thinks his name is David and has no idea what her boy does in the dark. He asks to spend Christmas with her. She says yes. Then he keeps killing anyway. Drifters and women the city had already written off, taunting Bosch toward each fresh body like it is a gift. And the closer Bosch looks, the more Waits feels less like a stranger and more like a mirror, an orphan raised in the same institution Bosch was, obsessed with catacombs and skulls, building something underground out of the dead. He murders his own mother, tells her he loves her while he does it. Meanwhile, the Delacroix case curdles. Arthur's drunk father Sam confesses, then unconfesses, and Bosch stops believing him. What Bosch finds instead is that Sam had abused his own daughter, and that the boy was actually killed by a neighborhood kid named Johnny Stokes over a skateboard. No grand villain, just a stupid, ordinary cruelty, which is somehow worse. Then Waits makes his last mistake. He kidnaps a young woman as bait, because it was always about pulling Bosch in. Eleanor Wish, Bosch's ex-wife and a former FBI profiler, sees the trap for what it is. Bosch and Edgar track them down anyway. Waits raises a gun. Bosch fires and drops him. Then Irving walks up to tell him the gun was unloaded. Suicide by cop, Bosch says. And this time, he means it. The paperwork calls it justice. Bosch calls it Tuesday. He shoves Captain Pounds through a window for good measure, turns in his badge to Lieutenant Billets, and heads off to finally spend some time with his daughter, Maddie. But before he can get out the door, one more call. Sam Delacroix has hunted down Johnny Stokes and killed him. Vengeance for the son he never really protected. Everybody counts, or nobody counts. Trouble is, in this city, the counting never stops. And the one murder Bosch has never been able to solve, the one that made him, is still out there waiting. 6 months later, Bosch comes back off suspension and straight into a body in a trunk. The dead man is Anthony Allen, a Hollywood producer with ties to the adult industry who had just come home from Las Vegas, and somebody put him in the back of his own car. Trunk Music, the old mob nickname. So of course everyone wants it to be the mob. Bosch, being Bosch, is not so sure. Allen's widow Veronica is a former dancer who plays grief like a slow song, hinting her husband kept a girlfriend out in Vegas. His head of security is Carl Nash, an ex-LAPD detective who smiles too much and offers to help. And inside Allen's car, investigators find a hidden compartment stuffed with cash, which is the kind of detail that turns a murder into a map. But there is a second story running underneath this one, and it belongs to the Irving family. Chief Irvin Irving's son George has gone undercover for internal affairs, chasing a dirty narcotics detective named Eddie Arsenault. A father's ambition, a son trying to prove he is more than a last name. It is going to cost this family everything, but not yet. Allen's money leads to Armenians. Tony changed his name and buried a past inside a street gang that grew into an empire run by a gangster named Joey Marks. The trail runs to Vegas, and Vegas is where Eleanor and Maddie live, which means Bosch's case and Bosch's family are now standing in the same room. Then a casino tape shows Eleanor playing poker with Tony Allen days before he died, and suddenly the ex-wife he still loves is a thread in his own murder book. Bosch chases the girlfriend, a dancer named Layla, and a club fixer named Rykov, who screams that the gun found in his bathroom was planted. Everyone is lying, which in this town is just called conversation. Then the Armenians raise the stakes for real. A man with an accent calls Bosch and says he has Eleanor and Maddie, and he will trade them for Rykov. Bosch and Edgar move fast, take the kidnappers down, and pull his family out alive. For one night, the job and the love do not cancel each other out. Meanwhile, George Irving sinks deeper into the dirty crew, riding an oil pump jack in some initiation ritual while the others search his things and find the wire hidden in his watch. They know, and the man they answer to is Carl Nash, the smiling security chief, running cops the way other men run errands. Then Rykov turns out to be an undercover FBI agent whose real name is Luke Goshen, which means the mob hit was never a mob hit at all. Somebody staged it to look like one. Bosch puts it together. Veronica Allen wanted her husband's money, so she hired Carl Nash to kill Tony and dress it up as Armenian business. And Nash, who has just discovered that George Irving went undercover as an internal affairs informant planted inside his crew, has the young man killed to bury that threat, not to close out the Allen case. A masked gunman guns George Irving down in the street. The chief of police loses his boy, and there is nothing in any rulebook that softens that. His wife Connie changes the locks and cannot forgive him for letting their son play spy. The endgame is all betrayal eating betrayal. Veronica tries to frame Nash and keep the money. Nash tries to run. The whole thing detonates at a bank where the cash is hidden. Marks and his men and Nash's crew all converging at once, and it ends in a shootout that leaves Marks dead and Nash wounded and running. Veronica walks because she always walks, at least for now. But Bosch is barely listening anymore because a woman named Annette has called him, an old friend of his mother's, and she says she knows who killed Marjorie Lowe. Annette admits she sent a client named Mitch to his mother the night she died, and Bosch pulls the thread until a name falls out, Fox Mitchell. He tracks down Caffrey, the retired detective who worked the case, and Caffrey tells him the ugly truth. Mitchell was a snitch for the narcotics division, so the department ordered everyone to leave him alone. His mother's killer was protected by the badge Bosch wears. He finds Nash first and finishes it, or rather Nash finishes himself, killed by his own grenade. Then Bosch chases Fox Mitchell to the end of the earth, only to find the man already dead of cancer, tucked into a grave where no confession will ever reach him. Bosch stands over the headstone, robbed of the one reckoning he has wanted his whole life. Except the name was wrong. He just does not know it yet. 16 months on, and Bosch is a man with too many cases and one obsession: his mother. But the season opens on somebody else's murder. A homeless veteran named Billy Meadows killed in a trailer, witnessed only by a teenage graffiti tagger who runs off into the dark. Bosch and Edgar catch it and learn Meadows came home from war and fell into drugs, which is a sentence this show has written 100 times. At the same time, Bosch is quietly hunting a different man, Ed Gunn, a killer who once walked free on a murder that matched the way Bosch's own mother was killed. Bosch has a camera planted in Gunn's apartment. Then Gunn turns up dead outside a motel, staged like a suicide, and a veteran robbery homicide detective named Jimmy Robertson starts circling Bosch himself as the prime suspect. Bosch surveilled the man, hated the man, and now the man is dead. That is a bad look even for someone who collects bad looks. But Bosch did not kill Gunn. Somebody wanted it to look like he did, and that somebody has a name Bosch cannot see yet, because his eyes are on a Hollywood mogul named Andrew Holland, a smug director on trial for murder whom Bosch and Deputy District Attorney Anita Benitez are trying to put away. Holland has money, lawyers, and a right-hand man named Rudy Tafero, and he throws parties where he calls himself the real victim. He also, it turns out, had Gunn bailed out of jail and killed, framing Bosch to sabotage the case against him. The owl statue found in Gunn's apartment, engraved with a line pointing to the Dutch painter Hieronymus Bosch, is a taunt aimed straight at Harry's name. Meanwhile, the Meadows case grows teeth. His old army unit is involved, led by a former soldier named Trevor Dobbs, with men called Woody and Xavi running surveillance and cleanup. They are smuggling stolen cash out of the Middle East through the docks, and Meadows was killed because he knew too much. Then they murder the tagger, Sharky, the boy who saw too much, and Bosch takes that one personally because he is the reason the kid was ever in danger. The killing has a military signature all over it, so Bosch knows exactly who to blame, even if he cannot yet prove it. Underneath the cases, the personal threads pull tight. Bosch has Maddie living with him now, learning to drive, learning who her father actually is. He has started something quiet with Benitez, and Irving, always playing the long political game, chases his own ambitions, while a serial murderer called the Koreatown Killer starts stacking bodies in the background, a slow drumbeat under everything else. The Holland case cracks first. Robertson and Pierce trace Gunn's bail money to Holland's secretary, then find evidence putting Rudy Tafero's brother Jesse at the scene of Gunn's murder. Bosch, being Bosch, plays dirty to win clean, quietly leaking the hidden camera footage of Jesse entering Gunn's apartment to a reporter so it can find its way back to the investigation. It works. They flip Rudy against Holland, wire him up, and get Holland to confess on tape. The mogul goes down, but Edgar realizes Bosch sent the tape, and something between the partners breaks that will not fully heal. The veterans go down harder, the way soldiers do. Woody draws on Edgar and dies for it. Xavi takes his revenge by shooting Edgar and nearly killing him. Then Dobbs and Xavi turn on each other on a boat, and Dobbs comes out alive. Bosch runs Dobbs down to an island off the coast, wins the shootout, and takes him in, using the very knife Xavi hid on that boat to tie Dobbs to the killings. Ends of the earth again. Bosch keeps going to them, but the gut punch is quieter than any shootout. Back during all of this, a fire was set at the Riverwatch retirement home, and Caffrey, the retired detective who once worked his mother's murder, died in it. Arson. Caffrey was the target. Somebody is still cleaning up the trail to Marjorie Lowe's killer, decades later, which means the killer is alive and untouchable, and afraid. Eleanor comes back to Los Angeles, visits Bosch and Maddie, and lets slip that she is working for the FBI again, a door reopening that will not stay open long. And then, in the wreckage Caffrey left behind, Bosch finds the truth he has bled for across 3 seasons. Fox Mitchell did not kill his mother. Mitchell's old friend did. A man named Bradley Walker, the current president of the police commission. The man who sits at the very top of the department Bosch has served his whole life. The killer was never hiding. He was signing Bosch's paychecks. 3 seasons deep, and the man who murdered Bosch's mother turns out to be running the department that pays him. If a cold case that refuses to die is your kind of thing, subscribe and stay for the reckoning. 3 months later, a civil rights attorney named Howard Elias is shot dead on the Angels Flight Railway, the little funicular that climbs Bunker Hill. Elias made his living suing the LAPD, and at the moment somebody killed him, he was about to take a police brutality case called Black Guardian to trial. So the whole city assumes a cop pulled the trigger, and the streets start to boil. Chief Irving, in a move that is either trust or a trap, puts Bosch in charge of the task force and plants 2 internal affairs investigators, Amy Snyder and Gabriella Linkett, to watch Bosch's every step. Bosch finds Elias's phone on the tracks with a text luring him him to that spot. Somebody knew he would come. But the real wound this season is not the case. It is Eleanor. She has become an FBI asset, playing high-stakes poker to gather intel on a ring of Chinese nationals. And at one game, she films a stranger who does not want to be filmed. The Black Guardian defendants, led by a veteran detective named Terry Drake, sweat over where the investigation is heading, because Drake was once Robertson's partner and mentor, and this case is personal for everyone touching it. One defendant, a detective named Frank Sheehan, has no alibi and shows up drunk on Bosch's doorstep swearing he did not do it. He admits the brutality, he denies the murder, then he runs, which makes him look guilty of both. Then Eleanor meets Bosch for lunch, just to ask him for parenting advice. Ordinary and tender and human. And as she walks back to her car, two men on a motorcycle ride past and shoot her dead, seconds after saying goodbye to Harry. No warning, no reason he can see, just gone. Maddie moves in with her father because there is nobody else left. And Bosch does the thing Bosch always does with grief. He turns it into a case. He starts working Eleanor's murder in secret while the Elias circus roars on around him. Maddie asks to see her mother's body. She aches that their last words were an argument. Bosch, who knows exactly what that feels like, tells her about his own last conversation with Eleanor. And for a moment, the two of them are just a father and a daughter drowning in the same water. The Elias case keeps twisting. Ballistics match the bullet in Elias to Sheehan's service weapon, and Sheehan looks cooked. Bosch talks him off a suicide before he can pull the trigger. But then the evidence starts to rot from the inside. The bullet that killed the railway operator does not match Sheehan's gun. Files were checked out and doctored, Snyder's name used, then Lincoln's, and the frame that was so neat begins peeling at the corners. Sheehan was bait, same as everyone else in this town. Bosch chases Eleanor's killers down a separate road that leads to a card dealer named Tiffany Xu, a restaurant called the Golden Soup, and a man from her video named Xue Chen. Chen hired local hitmen to silence her over what her phone had captured, and one of those shooters dies in a karaoke bar gunfight, while the other slips away on a motorcycle. Later, that shooter turns up dead in a car trunk with Bosch's business card stuffed in his mouth, a message Bosch does not get to answer because the FBI forces him to let Chen leave the country. Bosch believes his own government, through Agent Griffin, handed Eleanor to her killers by leaking the photo she trusted them with. Justice, once again, walking out the door in a nice suit. Then the two long threads finally braid. Lincoln confesses. She and Bradley Walker had a scheme running for years, secretly feeding evidence to Elias for his lawsuits and skimming the settlements. When Elias took Black Guardian to trial, the source of his footage would go on the record and end Walker's career, so Walker did not hire it out this time. He killed Elias himself. And when O'Shea refuses to move on, nothing but a confession, Bosch remembers Walker's alibi at the Biltmore Hotel, goes back and finds a backroom door that drops into the old tunnels running straight to Angel's Flight. The perfect crime had a service entrance. The last piece is smaller than a bullet, a hidden memory card tucked inside a fake quarter in Elias's pocket change, holding video of Sheehan and Drake torturing a suspect, the footage the whole war was fought over. Bosch turns it in to reopen the trial, and then he sits across from Bradley Walker, the president of the police commission, the man who has been signing his paychecks, and talks him into confessing to two murders, Howard Elias and Marjorie Lowe. 30 years of Bosch's life closed in one quiet room. He arrests Walker. No fireworks. Then he drives Maddie out to the desert, and together they scatter Eleanor's ashes into the wind. The oldest case is finally solved. The newest one never will be. Everybody counts or nobody counts. Bosch just keeps paying the bill. 15 months go by, and Bosch is exactly where you left him, chasing the dead because the living bore him. Two masked men named Hart and Stones kick in the door of a small pharmacy, put a bullet in the owner Jose Esquivel, and clear the shelves of opioids while the first squad car to respond folds itself around another cruiser in the street. Bosch and Jerry Edgar catch the murder, and it refuses to stay a simple robbery. Esquivel had been filing complaints against a pill mill run by a Dr. Garcia, the kind of clinic that turns sick people into customers and customers into corpses. So one dead pharmacist opens a door onto a prescription drug pipeline moved by Russian and Armenian muscle. Then, because the universe likes to stack the deck, an old ghost crawls out of a 1996 file. Maddie, now interning at the district attorney's office, warns her father that Preston Borders, the man he put away for the murder of Danielle Schuyler, is trying to overturn the conviction. The lever is a deathbed confession from a serial rapist named Ulmer, whose DNA has somehow surfaced on a handkerchief in the Schuyler evidence box that was never logged there before. And driving the appeal is Christina Henry, Bosch's old partner and older flame, a woman who has wanted to watch him burn for years and finally has a match. So Bosch does the one thing that must have physically hurt. He hires his oldest courtroom enemy, Honey Chandler, to defend him. To crack the pipeline, Bosch goes under. He plays a broken-down veteran, works his way into Garcia's clinic, and gets loaded into a van pool with the other users. In group therapy, he meets Elizabeth Clayton, a woman whose habit went bottomless after her daughter Daisy was murdered and never avenged. File that name away. Meanwhile, the Borders case rots from the inside. Chief Irving, sniffing a scandal that could torch his career, quietly reaches into the Schuyler file and destroys a piece of evidence to bury the whole problem. Bosch clocks the gap, because of course he does. The van becomes a private jet, the jet becomes a desert compound, and Bosch is now a captive of a crew boss named Walsh, who greets his new guest with a round of Russian roulette, the barrel pressed to Bosch's skull. Somewhere in the middle of all this, he also adopts a stray cattle dog and names him Coltrane, because even a man staring down a revolver needs something to come home to. Back home, Lieutenant Billets is covering for his silence and his stunts, risking her own command to keep the machine off his back while he plays dead men's games in the desert. The cover blows when journalist Scott Anderson prints Bosch's face alongside the Borders story, and Walsh's men recognize their planted narc for exactly what he is. They put him back on the jet to kill him. Bosch kills them first. The DEA storms the compound. Walsh slips the net, and Hart, one of the pharmacy shooters, gets nailed by DNA off his ski mask. Maddie clocks something, spotting a memo on her fellow intern Tom's desk and snapping a photo of it. A small betrayal that costs her the boyfriend and, soon enough, her patience with the whole arrangement. The courtroom finally catches up. At the habeas hearing, Chandler drags the whole rotten scheme into the light, exposing the Cronins for manufacturing the DNA fraud, and the judge throws Borders' appeal in the trash and has the schemers cuffed on the spot. Bosch is cleared, except the man knows what he saw. He confronts Irving about the tampering, and Irving admits his guilt to Bosch's face while permanently burying the evidence. A chief and a detective agreeing without a handshake that the truth is now a thing they will both carry to the grave. But Walsh is not the forgiving type. He and his last two men slip into Bosch's own home to finish the job, and Bosch guns down all three in his living room, which is roughly the fourth time this season someone has tried to murder him at close range. Off to the side, Edgar starts pulling a different thread. Two detectives named Marcos and Arias reek of corruption, and their trail runs toward a Haitian war criminal turned intelligence asset named Jacques Avril, a name that is going to cost Edgar everything before this is done. Maddie, for her part, has watched her father nearly get himself killed one too many times, and she tells him so to his face, reminding him that he is the only family she has left before she starts packing to move out and go back to school. And Irving, the man who just torched evidence to save his own hide, steps to a podium and announces he is running for mayor. In this city, the men who bury the bodies are the ones who get the corner office. 11 months on, and Bosch is quietly gnawing at the one case that never let him sleep: the murder of Daisy Clayton, Elizabeth's girl. He does not get to work it in peace. A medical physicist named Stanley Kent is marched to a lookout and executed, and 32 vials of cesium, enough radioactive material to poison a city, walk off into the dark. Kent's wife Alicia is found bound and gagged, sobbing about masked men. The FBI descends. Agents Brenner, Maxwell, and Reese all certain this is a terror plot, and the trail points at a pack of sovereign citizens who call themselves the 308. It goes sideways fast. A raid on the Strout brothers ends with Agent Maxwell shooting Travis Strout dead, and Officer Powers taking a career-ending wound, and nothing in the house ties anyone to the cesium. Then the whole apocalypse quietly deflates. The missing vials turn up stashed in a burned homeless man's campsite, never in the killer's hands at all, which means the end of the world was never the point. So Bosch stops looking at terrorists and starts looking at the widow. The marriage was rotten with money. A prenuptial agreement handed Stanley half of Alicia's fortune, but only if she kept a morals clause, and the hostage photo has a robe sitting in the wrong place. Bosch wrangles a wiretap out of Judge Sobel. Hidden camera footage surfaces of Alicia strolling freely through her house during the hours she claimed to be tied up, and the grieving widow calls for a lawyer. In walks Honey Chandler, now employing Maddie as an intern. Alicia cuts a plea, admits she schemed to trap her husband into breaking the morals clause by stealing the cesium, and names her lover as the man who actually killed him, Agent Maxwell. The manhunt ends when Maxwell's own partner Reese puts him down. Maddie, too close to the whole thing for comfort, resigns from Chandler's office rather than help defend the woman who plotted a husband's murder. But the case that owns Bosch is still Daisy. Daisy. He works it like a man doing penance, from a witness named Alex Sands to a blackmail racket where Daisy was used to bait pedophiles for the camera, until a set of recovered video files coughs up a crime scene cleaner named Roger Dillon. Bosch drives past Dillon's garage, sees a white van, and the floor drops out. Inside, they find chains, a mattress, and a stack of victims' school IDs, Daisy's among them. Dillon admits killing her, claims he handed the others off to a criminal ring, and trades those men for a manslaughter charge and a self-defense story. Bosch reaches into the interview room, quietly disconnects the camera, and lets the man understand precisely what he is. Then he drives to tell Elizabeth her daughter finally has an answer, and finds that she is gone, having lost her long fight. He is the only mourner at her funeral, and he watches her lowered into the ground beside Daisy, mother and child in the same plot. The case closed, and every single person in it destroyed. Edgar's thread ends worse. Gary Wise's father, Dwight, will not stop digging at Jacques Avril, and a DEA agent named Hovan goes under to reach him, buffered the whole way by Avril's right hand, Remy Toussaint. In the end, Avril outplays them all, wearing a wire to trick his own Jamaican shooters into confessing the murders of Marcos and Arias, then walking free while they go down. But Toussaint murders Dwight on his own doorstep. That is the thing Edgar cannot swallow. He stakes out Avril's house alone, watches Toussaint break in, follows him through the door, and comes out the other side with 2 dead men on the floor. He tells Billets that Avril killed Toussaint, and he shot Avril in self-defense. His story clears. Bosch looks at his partner and knows better, and tells him plainly that whatever really happened in that house, it was the wrong move. Around all of it, Irving plays politics with a knife at his back. He marries Jun, learns he has a child on the way, and runs for mayor, until a 1996 cassette resurfaces tying him to a buried police chief scandal, and his rival Killeran uses it to squeeze him out of the race. And on Alicia Kent's trial day, Travis Strout's widow Heather smuggles a bomb into the courthouse to avenge her husband, only for Beryl of all people to spot the threat in time, clear the room, and let Bosch haul the thing clear before it takes anyone with it. Bosch guesses there is a second bomb headed for the FBI building and warns Reese, and Heather is arrested on her way there. Alicia is convicted. The city keeps spinning, and Bosch stands alone at a grave, which is starting to feel like his permanent address. He does not know it yet, but the worst year of his life is already loading. A burning building, a dead child in the hallway, a partner about to come apart in his hands. The end starts with fireworks. It is the last night of 2019, the whole city drunk and looking up, when a fire tears through an East Hollywood apartment building and kills several people. Among them, a 10-year-old named Sonia Hernandez, who died carrying homemade tamales down the hall to her neighbors. When the burn patterns say arson, Bosch shows up to the worst thing he has ever seen. His partner does not. Edgar is somewhere else entirely, coming apart at the seams over the man he shot months before. The fire was no accident and no random cruelty. It traces back to a drug operation, to a woman they call La Mayorista, and to a fire starter named Peña doing the wet work with a suspect named Alvarez in the mix. Bosch pulls Vega in to cover for a partner who can barely function and starts climbing the ladder toward whoever gave the order. While that burns, a second fire starts in the courts. Chandler picks up a fast-talking financial criminal named Vincent Franzen, who offers to trade a much bigger fish, a financier named Carl Rogers, in exchange for his own freedom. Maddie, working for Chandler, helps prep Franzen to testify to the Securities and Exchange Commission and gets him tucked into a safe house. It does not hold. Franzen and his girlfriend turn up murdered with Robertson standing over the bodies, and moments later, Maddie walks into Chandler's home to find her mentor shot and bleeding out on the floor. Here is where it turns personal in the way this show never forgives. Bosch and Edgar sit down with Carl Rogers, and Edgar, frayed and off his game, lets slip that Maddie is the witness who can bury the man. So Rogers' lawyer Fawkes hires a professional to clean up the mess. The hitman lands in Los Angeles and starts trimming loose ends, killing Fawkes first, then forcing his way into the courthouse through Judge Donna Sobel, Bosch's girlfriend, and murdering her before turning his gun on Maddie. Bosch, Robertson, and Edgar catch him in the act, and the shootout ends with the assassin dead and Maddie alive by a margin too thin to think about. An assistant district attorney named Tegan Boyle is exposed as the mole-feeding Fawkes and arrested, and Maddie testifies to a grand jury to keep herself breathing. Sonia's father comes to see Bosch, carrying a grief so heavy it nearly folds him in half. and it does the only thing left to do. It hardens Bosch's resolve to a point. He learns from Irving, who leaned on the FBI, that Pena was the man who set the fire. But Pena has cut himself a federal deal, and the machine starts closing every door Bosch tries to open. Irving orders him to let Pena walk. Bosch, being Bosch, has no intention of doing any such thing. The rot runs through the building too. Two patrolmen named Leonard and Norris have spent the whole season grinding Lieutenant Billets down at the orders of Captain Cooper, and Billets finally turns it inside out, exposing Cooper, Leonard, and Norris for conspiracy and corruption and getting all three arrested. Irving promotes her to captain, a rare, clean win in a season that offers almost none. Then it all comes down, and the ground itself gives way, because Hollywood Homicide is being shut down for good. Billets posts the final assignments for a division that will not exist much longer, and lowers the last boom on Cooper and his crew. Chandler wakes from her coma. Maddie, shaken to the bone by everything she has survived, decides she is going to apply to the LAPD, the same badge her father wears. And Irving suspends Bosch for refusing to give up on Pena. The feds cut the fire starter loose, and Pena walks out the front of the police station a free man, straight into a bullet. Sonia Hernandez's father is waiting for him, and guns him down in front of the station before the police cut the grieving man down where he stands. Two more bodies on the pile. No justice. Just a father who did the thing the system would not. And Bosch has finally had enough. Enough of the deals, the buried evidence, the chiefs who hide bodies to win election, the machine that let a child die and then shielded the man who lit the match. So he walks in, and he turns in his badge, and for the first time in the whole run of his life, Harry Bosch is not a cop. He stands outside the only thing he ever was, wondering what a man like him even is without it. Harry Bosch hands over his badge and walks out, and that is the end of it. 7 seasons. A wall of cold cases closed by a man who would not let them go. And in the end, the job that defined him is the thing he has to give up, because it stopped counting the people he refused to stop counting. Everybody counts, or nobody counts. And the last irony of the whole run is his daughter Maddie, who watched all of it and decided to pin on the same badge her father just turned in. If canceled and completed shows getting a real send-off is your kind of thing, hit subscribe. That is how the next one gets made. More crime recaps are waiting on the end card if you want them.